Welcome back to week 6 of the NFL football season. Today is the head coach episode. I'm here with Yanni. How's it going, man?
What's up? What's
Uh,
up?
just some real quick housekeeping stuff. We missed front office upload on Tuesday of this week. We're very sorry. Stuff happens. We're busy with life. But to make it up to you guys, we are going to be dropping a surprise episode on Saturday with the gambling picks. So keep your eyes peeled on that. There will be a sweet double upload for you guys with content to be announced soon. But anyways, let's get into the head coach stuff for this week.
Okay, first game, divisional matchup. We're starting to get into divisional matchups. We have been for the last couple of weeks. Kind of exciting. Denver at around 19 points with the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the highest implied totals of the week at around 29. For Denver, I mean, you kind of have the pass catchers as tricky decisions this week. Sutton, Judy, Mr. Unlimited, McLaughlin. McLaughlin looks like their best running back this year. Javonta, one, is injured right now. He missed last week. But two, he looked really ineffective when he came back. He's coming off of that terrible triad knee injury. It's extremely serious. I was shocked when he was back week 1. And I wouldn't be surprised to see McLaughlin continue to get good touches. Kansas City is not allowing a ton of points to running back, so he's not a full-blown start. But I think if you're going to start one, that's McLaughlin, so that's what makes him a tricky decision. And again, along with Sutton and Judy, neither one has really taken the reins. Sutton's been more consistent this year, but we know Judy's more talented. It's hard to say which one's going to break out there. And we know they're trying to showcase them for trades right now. The rumors are flying that they're moving. So those are all tricky decisions. For the Chiefs, you're starting your big three this year. I guess maybe it's a little early to call Pacheco part of their big three. I think he is. I love the guy. I love watching him play. You're rolling out Mahomes, Mr. Pfizer, Pacheco. Denver's defense is really anyone getting a lot of touches there is going to do really well. And then for the Chiefs, I'd say their other wide receivers, do what you want if you want to throw a dart in daily fantasy or something. The one guy that probably is worth a look this week, but he's still a tricky decision because he's been inconsistent, is Rashee Rice. He is clearly their best receiver right now. He's their most talented guy. I fully expect them to add someone before the trade deadline. The one I've been dying for is Terry. I want to see Terry go to the Chiefs. It's been killing me all year. But Rashee Rice, for the time being, is their best receiver, so he's a tricky decision.
Yeah. My only note on this one would be if Mr. Pfizer can't play because of the ankle, I would almost call Rashee Rice a start at that point.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I guess one other thing, my read on the Denver Broncos situation, like for the pass catchers, is that it's still Judy as the one, but he's just been slower coming back from the hamstring. So Sutton has been kind of taking advantage of that, but I think he's going to slowly dwindle off and die here in the coming weeks.
He's old and slow.
All right, next we got our third London game in a row. We got the Ravens going to London to play the Titans, and the Titans, it's not really a home game. The Ravens have an implied team total of like 23 points, and the Titans have an implied team total of 18 points. For the Ravens, our starts are Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, and Zay Flowers. This Titans team is still a pass funnel. All-time running back Zach Moss just kind of spit in my face last week, running for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns on the team I just love to talk about how great their run defense is. That being said, we're sitting all the Ravens backfield. Zach Moss is just a generational talent, and don't expect the other Ravens guys to have the same type of success that Zach Moss did.
Just because Herschel Walker 2.0 has been going off doesn't mean everyone will.
Exactly. For the Titans, we're starting DeAndre Hopkins and we're starting Derrick Henry. I don't know. I've been a little bit more encouraged about how Tannehill's looked the past couple weeks. He still is not a great quarterback, but he's been doing enough to get Hopkins involved. And I think Hopkins is still a stud. He is just stuck on a tough team. And Derrick Henry, as always, is just consistent as ever. This Titans offense kind of stinks, though, so something to be aware of. Tricky decisions. Traylon Burks, this Ravens pass defense, they did just get Marlon Humphrey back, but they're still banged up, so they could be had if Tannehill could get him the ball. And Tajay Spears, congratulations. Welcome to the tricky decisions. his usage has kind of been the same all year, but he had a little more success last week and gotten to the end zone. So if you're strapped at the running back position, he might be worth a shout, but I don't love it. You got anything on this one?
No, Spears is much more of a PPR thing, and it's just about his snap share that continues to creep up, and then game script. If they're trailing a lot, you kind of expect him to get some dump offs, maybe do something with it. He's probably more of a DFS guy for now. I mean, I doubt you have a roster situation where you're rolling him out. But if you went like 0 RB and you did a true 0 RB where you didn't start picking him till like 7th, 8th round, I could see a situation where you are starting him, but probably more of a DFS thing. All right, Niners at the Browns. The Niners have an implied total of 21.5 points. The Browns have an implied total of 16. Deshaun Watson's been injured, which I think explains the extremely low both total for the game and total for the Browns. The Niners themselves are averaging over 30 points this year, so 37.5 total points seem kind of weird to me. But, the Browns do have a pretty solid defense, and Deshaun is banged up. But for the Niners, I think Purdy is working himself into where you're kind of looking at him almost weekly at this point. I know for a lot of people, he's their second quarterback, so it's obviously a little bit roster dependent. But for many rosters, he's just a flat out start, and this week's no different. CMC, always. Ayuk, always. Debo, always when he's healthy. He's been dealing with an injury, but he looked like a lot better last week from the week before, and I'd expect him to be fully bounced back this week. He's always banged up because of the way he plays, but when he's healthy, he's a start. And then our tricky decisions, Kittle. Kittle's gone like, bust, boom, bust, boom. He's been kind of inconsistent. His red zone usage has not been there this year, which is kind of what you drafted him for with Purdy. That's what you were hoping for. So he's a tricky decision. And I think a lot of rosters are going to roll him out. They're going to take him for that upside. They're going to hope they hit the upside. But in a game where I could see him having a pretty big lead and it being a pretty rush-heavy game script, I'd be surprised if Kittle has a big week this week. For the Browns, we're sitting Bill Cosby. Deshaun is coming off an injury. He's playing an extremely stout defense. The Niners have not been very friendly to quarterbacks. Matt Stafford had some success getting the ball out of his hand in like a second, and they have the roster to do it, and they have the offensive scheming to do it. And I guess the Browns do to some degree. They do have a guy that is of the Shanahan coaching tree. So maybe they try to roll out a little bit of it, but I do not see him having the explosive plays. I certainly don't see him running out of the pocket. We saw what happened with Dak when he did that last week, so he's a sit. Your tricky decisions are Cooper. Cooper's been healthy on and off this year. And honestly, I don't know how much time Deshaun's going to have to throw this game. And certainly if it's Dorian Thompson-Robinson, you're not going to have a good game. So he's a tricky decision. And Elijah Moore and Ford. Ford has been kind of touchdown dependent the last two games that he started. And this game, the Niners actually give up a pretty good average in yards per carry. So he's not necessarily a bad start. I could see a lot of rosters that are going to have to fit him in. I have a couple rosters with some tough choices about whether or not he's going to get in for me. But he is a little bit touchdown dependent. He's been a touchdown dependent RB2 this year. Use your discretion when you're rolling him out there. And Elijah Moore is really more because if the teams have been countering the Niners defensive line by getting the ball out of their hand in a second, he's their drags guy, he's their slant guy, he's their curls guy. Probably more of a DFS play, but he's someone worth keeping an eye on this week.
Huh. All right, next we got the Panthers going into Miami to play the Dolphins. This will be a good one. The Panthers have an implied team total of 17, and the Dolphins have an implied team total of 31 points. Our only start for you on the Panthers is Thielen. I fought Yanni tooth and nail on this. I do not want to call Adam Thielen a start. It just does not feel. I just hate him as a person. I hate him as a football player. He's too old to be doing this. But this is what the Panthers are now. So fire him up. Have you heard that the Panthers' number one priority right now from like in their front office is to get a wide receiver one for Bryce Young because they're so bought in on him?
Yes, I have heard that.
It's almost like they lost a wide receiver one in the trade for Bryce Young, and you also gave up Caleb Williams. But
dude, it needs to always be said when this conversation comes up. As of now, they traded Caleb Williams and DJ Moore for Bryce Young. And we don't know what that last pick will be. But as of now, they traded Caleb Williams and DJ Moore for Bryce Young.
See, I don't know. For me, it's fun to hate on Bryce Young. I like jumping on the bandwagon with you. It is very early for him, though. I would say he could still do it. But early returns are not good. We'll just say that. And speaking of Bryce Young, he's a sit for us this week. Don't do it. Don't get tricked into it. And Miles Sanders is a sit as well. He's been banged up. He's had 2 fumbles in the past 2 weeks, and he's still working his way back from an injury. Just find someone else to do it. You can find somebody else to start. You don't have to do him. For the Dolphins, we're starting most of the main guys. Tua, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Raheem Mostert. It was a nice 2 weeks where he wasn't relevant, but now the A-Chain is injured and potentially going on the IR. Our favorite player is back to a start. So I would expect another 40-point week from Mostert here, to be honest with you.
Yep, actually.
Yeah. The only other person who I think is worth mentioning on this team is Jeff Wilson. They just opened up his 21-day practice window, so he will be returning from the injured reserve. I don't know if it will be this game, but it will be soon. So I will be interested to see yet again what the backfield split will be once Jeff Wilson is back. Raheem Mostert owners, this is going to be, we told you it was too late. It might not be too late anymore. Wait for him to put up 40 in this game and trade him, preferably for someone like, I don't know. Who do you think you could get for Raheem Mostert?
I would try to get Joe Mixon. There's a bunch of borderline guys. Would you prefer Olave or Raheem rest of season? Probably Raheem because of the uncertainty around A-Chain.
I would take Olave in that one just because I think Carr will get better. I think Carr's hurt right now, and that offense will get better.
Like Joe Mixon is, like, to me, a clear one that stands out. Joe Mixon's a guy who I would send that for all day.
And apparently, managers are freaking out about Tony Pollard. If you can find a manager that's freaking out about Tony Pollard, smash that. Yeah.
Dude, if you can package a bench piece with Raheem and get like Bijan, do that.
Yep.
Do that. Oh, Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you could get Amon-Ra for Mostert, I would do that.
I think that's it for this game. Do you have any comments on the game itself, Yanni? This just seems to be a blowout to me. Poor Panthers, man.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's just a tragedy. There's nothing to say. It's just a mess. I feel terrible for that team. And Adam Thielen, his old body taking a pounding. Okay, next one, divisional game. These games are always kind of fun. Jaguars at the Colts. Jaguars around 25 points. Colts around 21. We have the Gardner Minshew revenge game. I love Minshew. I've loved him since he came in the league. I always yell Minshew at my TV screen every time they show him. And I think that would make him happy to know that. I hope this gets to him. So interesting game. I was telling Ted, I think certainly you're rolling out Trevor Lawrence this week just because the Colts secondary has been really vulnerable. I actually do think it'll be a pretty high scoring game. I'm starting Trevor Lawrence over CJ Stroud in the league I'm in. So CJ's been pretty good this year, but I think Trevor has a big game. He's coming off of a big game. ETN, you're starting every week. ETN is now up to, I believe, the half PPR wide receiver running back 7 or 8. He's seeing over 80% of his team snaps at running back. He's one of the few true bell cows in the NFL right now. You have to feel good if you drafted him. Congratulations. I'd roll him out. I missed my buy low on him. I had like 6 different offers going back and forth, and none of them went through, and you're not getting him now. Ridley, Ingram, Kirk, the pass catchers. The Colts secondary is not great. They're pretty good in the trenches. Their secondary is just not good, so you roll them out. Zay Jones is banged up, so that's a bump up for Ingram and Kirk. Ridley is still their alpha. I guess there's some debate about that, but yeah, I think he's fantastic, and he will see the usage. It's just a matter of when. So they're all starts this week. For the Colts, I think you're starting the 2 studs, apparently, Zach Moss and Pittman. Zach Moss, at least for the next week or two, I think you probably have to start him. And even then, it'll be interesting to see what the snap share looks like between him and Jonathan Taylor. But I saw him dropped in a few leagues before the game started. That was a wild decision. I couldn't comprehend that. For now, I think he is a start for this week and maybe for next week. I think from there, he'll maybe move into like a low end to high end flex. We'll see. And then your tricky decisions for the Colts are going to be Minshew. I think Minshew's kind of a sneaky DFS play. That Minshew Minshew Pittman stack might be kind of cool this week if you want to explore that, or even sneakier if you want to go on the cheap. Minshew and Josh Downs. Josh Downs had his first double-digit fantasy game last week. He's a rookie receiver, and I've seen him cropping up on pickup lists and whatnot on YouTube, especially in PPR. I really like Josh Downs. I think he's a good guy, good player. And then the last one is Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor had one explosive play last week. He did have a catch out of the backfield for 20 yards. Besides that, he was just sort of grinding the ball. He didn't look great. Tough matchup. He's coming back off injury. You kind of expect this to be his worst game of the year, or you kind of expect that to be his worst game of the year. This game, I would expect him to get more usage. I don't think he'll get full run for another 2 weeks, though, so factor that into your decision-making around him.
Yeah. Only other comment I have is if the new Barry Sanders, Zach Moss, keeps it up, it might just be a timeshare the entire year.
Craig.
I can't believe it. I've never seen a player that I thought was so dead come out and look this good. Good for him.
He couldn't beat out Singletary. Dude, he couldn't beat out Singletary for usage on the Bills.
Well, you got to understand, Devin Singletary was a sneaky top 15 option on Buffalo.
The Bills gave him his walking papers.
Yes, they did. All right, yeah, that's pretty much all I have on this one. I think this is our first rematch of the year. This was the week 1 game. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Next, we got the Minnesota Vikings going into Chicago and Soldier Field to play the Bears. The Vikings have an implied team total of about 24 points, and the Bears have an implied team total of about 21 points. For the Vikings, without Justin Jefferson, if you have him on your team, my condolences. Throw him on IR because he's going to be gone for at least 4 weeks. But in his absence, we're still starting Cousins, Alexander Madison, Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne, and TJ Hawkinson. Couple things about this. First of all, this is the Bears defense. This is what we do. We start our guys against them. Second of all, I didn't realize this, but when the Vikings were asked about Justin Jefferson's absence, I believe they said that KJ Osborne is going to be filling that X receiver role for him.
Yep.
So that is slightly concerning to hear. He's definitely not as good as Jordan Addison. But without Justin Jefferson there, the Vikings are forced into playing Jordan Addison, so he will get his snaps finally. Good job. And then tricky decision, Cam Akers. Here's the deal. He's starting to get a few more snaps. I don't know whether or not last week he got more work just because of the nature of the game and they weren't running it that effectively, or what the deal is, or if there'll be a hot hand team. Since the Bears just don't play defense well against anybody, I'm still firing up Madison here as a start. But yeah, we're bringing up Akers because he's starting to get some work. I would expect this to be more of a timeshare in the coming weeks here, but this will be one of the last good Alexander Madison start weeks. For the Bears, great win last week for them, and because they've looked good the past couple of weeks, we're firing up Justin Fields and DJ Moore. DJ Moore, if you went against him last week, you probably lost. Or if you had him on your team, you probably won. That was a great performance, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. Let's see if he can do it again. This Vikings defense can be had. For the running backs, Dante Foreman, he's been a healthy scratch all year, but Khalil Herbert, he hurt himself on the most bizarre-looking play I've ever seen, and Roshan Johnson is in concussion protocol. So if Roshan doesn't play in this game, then we're calling Dante Foreman just a flat-out start. Cole Kmet is also a start for us. He's looked great the past couple weeks. He's been eating. No, just flat-out sits for us. Roshan Johnson is a tricky decision for us if he plays. And by proxy, I think at that point, Foreman would be too. Basically, we love it if Foreman plays and Roshan doesn't. But if Roshan and Foreman play, then it's weird because we don't know where the carries are going, per se. And Darnell Mooney, tricky decision. He's been very up and down all year. This Vikings team can be thrown on and loves to blitz a lot. So you never know when Mooney could break one off. But I don't like him enough to be a start. You got anything on this one, Yanni?
No, I mean, fun fact, Justin Fields has more passing touchdowns than Mahomes this year. So he's doing really well. Congratulations if you bought low on him, and good for you if you didn't sell low.
I think he leads the league in passing touchdowns, doesn't he?
I don't know. I mean, having 8 of them in 2 weeks kind of
Yeah.
Who is that?
Here's a question for you. Do you think Justin Fields is still an NFL starting caliber quarterback, or
Absolutely.
you think so?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think what's going to happen is the Bears have to take Caleb Williams. I mean, you can't get rid of, you can't say no to Caleb. Caleb Williams is instantly one of the, he is right now one of the 3 to 4 most valuable football players on earth, just period. Like including all of the NFL and college because of his ceiling, because of his age, all of that. So you can't not take him if you go first. And I think what's going to happen is some team's going to swoop in on Justin Fields and he's going to get a chance on maybe a roster that's kind of built and has the guys for him. And I'm really interested to see what happens. Really interested. I love Justin Fields.
All right. So you think Justin Fields is still a guy, just not in Chicago, maybe?
Yeah, I was off. I do. You and me have gone back and forth where I said multiple times too on here, like, it started to waver a little bit. I started to wonder if it just wasn't going to happen. I think the Bears were just playing horribly. But you see, like, if the team looks competent, he put up 8 touchdowns in 2 weeks, lit some teams on fire,
Yeah.
Against 2 really bad defenses, though, right? So he might be a can crusher. That might be the more accurate takeaway from the last couple of weeks.
No.
But I want to see him on a real team, dude. That's what I want to see, is him on a real team.
He's absolutely done what he needs to do the past couple weeks, that's for sure. Definitely changed the narrative around him, I think, at least for the time being.
It's also hard to say, like, was this a DJ Moore breakout or was it a Justin Fields breakout?
I think it was a Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio refusing to double cover or roll protection towards DJ Moore. They just saw it happening and were like, we could stop this. They couldn't stop it.
Right. But, like, if he went to Atlanta, would I be curious to see how it went? Yeah. Yeah, I would. Okay, Seahawks and Bengals. Seahawks around 21-point implied total. Bengals coming back at 24 points. Seems like an extremely close game on paper, but the Bengals kind of had a good week there at home. That's worth about 3 points. For the Seahawks, the only 2 guys you're really rolling out, like, weekly, and even then weekly is like, I never feel good. I have DK on a roster this year. I never, when I start him, I'm never like, oh, he's going to smash it. But he has been getting, I think he's averaging about 11 half PPR points a game. There are very few rosters that are so solid that you're sitting DK. And then Walker, look, Kenneth Walker III, he was on our sells or my sells list last week, only for the right price. More so because I do get the feeling he's touchdown dependent, and I do get the feeling that his efficiency is slipping and that they're working Charbonnet and more. But until, like, something really changes, you're not sitting that guy ever. You're starting him every week. Your sit is Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then your tricky decisions are Geno and Lockett. Lockett's just a product of game script here. He's, they're probably going to be trailing at some point unless Joe reverts. But if Joe, he looked like himself last week, and one would assume as he's getting to 6 to 8 weeks from that injury, he's only going to look better week to week. Obviously, Jamar Chase is on fire. So if they're trailing in the game and they're passing a lot, Geno and Lockett will both have a favorable game script. What they do with that is hard to say because they've been inconsistent this year, but they're certainly worth taking a look at. But tricky decisions. For the Bengals, you're starting your big 3, Burrow, Chase, Mixon. Mixon, I think, had 25 carries, 3 targets last week. And Jamar Chase is, like, I think 3rd or 4th or 2nd in the NFL in targets. He's outscoring Justin Jefferson this year in fantasy because of his big week last week, but those points count. Jamar Chase looks like he's back to the stud he was. Congratulations. If you bought low on him, you're probably looking at a championship depending on what your roster looks like. And then tricky decision, fractured rib with T. Higgins. They're playing what I consider an elite. Ted does not like their secondary. I consider Seattle's secondary elite. Witherspoon coming off of his coming out party. So tough secondary, game where they should have a lead. Cracked rib. Higgins is a tricky decision, and if you can, honestly, I would probably prefer to not start him this week until you see it. They do this weird thing with Higgins specifically, and I know because he was on my team when they did it, where he goes out and he takes a snap, and then he goes back to the bench for the rest of the game. I don't know what Zach Taylor's doing. So he's a tricky decision for that reason. Anything to add, Ted?
Yeah, the Bengals, I think they're the team that should have drafted Zach Charbonnet. I was calling that in the offseason. I wanted the Bengals to draft him. So I think it's interesting. Imagine Charbonnet on this Bengals team instead of Joe Mixon. Yep. I think he could definitely punch it in from the 1, which Joe Mixon was not able to do last week and struggled all last year doing as well. And then I don't really have anything else. No. I mean, other than just, I think Daniel Jones makes every secondary look great. We'll see. This will be more of a test for the Seahawks, assuming Joe Burrow is healthy. Who knows? I'm not sure how much of it was Joe Burrow being all the way back and how much of it was the Cardinals secondary stinking. I don't know. I didn't really watch the game, so.
And just an all-time game from Jamar.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. I never thought Jamar Chase never I thought it was just his opportunity, right? Like you can only, as a wide receiver, you can only do what the quarterback throws to you, right? You can only catch the balls he throws to you. So, but yeah, I think he's always been this dude. That's why he was getting drafted 2 overall. It's for a reason.
I do think it's interesting, dude, that everyone just sort of says the best 3 wide receivers in the game are Devontae, Tyreek, and Justin Jefferson. Tyreek's certainly the fastest, but dude, when you watch Jamar, like his combination of route running and speed, he literally is always open. Yeah. Always. Really a unique player. It's a joy to watch him play.
All right. Next, we got 2 of my
favorite burner.
Yeah, the 2 of my favorite teams, actually. You know, I've watched the Saints have been just a wagon for me this year on unders, and I have a team with Carr on it. I have 2 teams with Olave on it. I have a Kamara share. So I watch a lot of Saints. And the Texans, one of my new favorite teams. CJ Stroud is a baller. He is legit. If you're a Texans fan, I would be so excited. But anyways, the Saints are going into Houston to play the Texans. The Saints have an implied team total of 22. The Texans have an implied team total of about 21. So it's a close one. Our starts for the Saints are Kamara, Olave, and Michael Thomas. This Texans run defense, they did a good job last week on Bijan and Tyler Algier. Kamara is still a start, especially with Carr banged up. Like he's the centerpiece of the offense until Carr can get healthy. Chris Olave, he's had a rough couple weeks. The one game was like Carr's first game back from the AC joint, and he just couldn't even get the ball thrown his way. Then last week against the Patriots, he got bailed out with a touchdown. He pulled up in pregame warmups with a toe injury, so I actually made a switch on the team. One team I have him on, I switched out him with Zay Flowers before the game. It saved me 2 points. I still lost, but just interesting to note, but I think he'll be back and ready to go for this one. And Michael Thomas, since Olave has been struggling, he's been the wide receiver 1 in this offense the past 2 weeks, so he's getting the ball enough to be a start for us. Our sit is Taysom Hill. You know, he's more of a sit to me, not because he's a terrible fantasy option, but you're a terrible person if you start him as a quarterback in your tight end slot. Don't do that. Yep. Nobody likes that. You're not cool if you do that. If you're a team and you roll out Taysom Hill as your tight end looking for quarterback numbers, you're trash. Quit. And then Derek Carr, tricky decision. He's still coming back from the AC joint, which is, I don't think he's all the way healthy yet. But this Texans team made Desmond Ridder look great last week. I think this Saints team is comparable weapons to what the Falcons have. Maybe you could say Bijan's a little bit better than Kamara, and maybe Olave better than Drake London. But yeah, tricky decision. I don't love it, but he's worth a look. For the Texans, our only start for them is Nico Collins. It looks like Tank Dell is going to be out. He's in concussion protocol. He got knocked out last week. So yeah, he's going to be. He should be the featured guy in the pass game for the Texans. Bobby Trees is a sit for us. He's kind of fallen off the past couple weeks after a hot start. I don't know. Do you think he gets any more work with Tank Dell out, Johnny? I don't know.
If he's dirt cheap in daily fantasy, I'd look at him. But would I go and add him off the wire and start him? Absolutely not.
Yeah, this is a good Saints defense. The Saints don't do a ton of things well, but they play defense really well. Then tricky decisions. CJ Stroud. He like we both said, we love this kid. He's the real deal. He's legit. But this is a good Saints defense. So there could be situations where maybe you let him ride the pine this week. Dameon Pierce. This Texans line is still banged up. He has been getting he's clearly the bell cow in this backfield, but like he's just not very effective when he touches the ball at this point. So tricky decision. This is a good defense. And Dr. Schultz caught the game-winning touchdown. Or not game-winning, the go-ahead touchdown last week before Desmond Ridder drove down the field like Tom Brady to get the win for the Falcons. But yeah, he is outscored Kyle Pitts this season. One of Yanni's preseason hot takes, which is come home so far. Do you have anything on this game, Yanni, that you wanted to add, or?
No, I mean, I do think if you have Lattimore on Collins and you have no Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz will be my tight end in every one of my daily fantasy rosters this week. He has 30 half PPR points the last 2 weeks. So he's been like a sneaky good play. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay. Commanders at Falcons. Commanders at a 20-point implied total. Falcons at 22.5. For the Commanders, shockingly enough, Logan Thomas has worked his way into a start the last 2 weeks. It is the Bieniemy system. He runs that Andy Reid system. They love their tight ends there. They absolutely love their tight ends. They use the hell out of them, even if it's someone average like Logan Thomas, who dropped a really key pass in their game last week and then fumbled the next or the drive before. It's a gross start, but you're starting him. You're sitting Gibson. Gibson only profiles as someone who's going to get some work. One, I'd much prefer to be rolling him out there in full PPR. Two, the game script probably needs to favor him. If they're going to be trailing for like a quarter and a half, 2 quarters, yeah, he'll probably get his targets. But beside that, I don't think you're looking to roll him out. I saw him on everyone's must-add guys on the waiver wire this week, and to me, it still looks like they want to give Brian Robinson the bulk of the carries. There's something really odd happening with that Bears game where I don't know if they didn't expect to fall behind. It was really, I'm inclined to disregard that game as an outlier for most of the things you saw. And then Sam Howell too, who we didn't get him on our list, but our tricky decisions, Brian Robinson, their pass catcher, Sam Howell. Sam Howell has had a couple really solid weeks. I don't think this is going to be a high enough scoring game. I think it's going to be a lot of rushing. I think it's going to be a pretty short game. And I don't know how much room Sam Howell's going to find to run around. He got hit a lot last week. The Falcons have a pretty solid defense. And then Brian Robinson, 2 of the last 3 weeks, he's been held to double digits. He started off on fire this year. He's been stopped on the 1-yard line in those 3 weeks 4 times. So maybe there's a little bit of bad luck involved, but also if you've been stopped on the 1-yard line 4 times, it's also a skill issue. And had probably his worst game of the season, I would say, last week. So he's a tricky decision. We'll see where he goes from there. For the Falcons, you're starting Bijan, and actually we're going to have Pitts in London as starts this week. I think that the Commanders are second in the NFL in points allowed, and when you're playing a team like that, and when you're coming off of 2 good weeks, the Falcons target tight ends at the highest rate in the NFL. Just Pitts wasn't doing anything with it for whatever reason. He kind of showed his first signs of life last week, and it looked like Ridder really vibed with him. Like when Pitts, he looked for him in key situations. He was keeping the sticks moving. I was watching that game intently because me and Ted had a bet, head-to-head bet on it. So I actually did watch a lot of that game. So I'm rolling out their pass catchers this week, Pitts in London. For tricky decisions, Ridder, Algier, Jonnu Smith, because they target the tight ends like that, tricky decision. Ridder, because it's a bad defense. I think there's a lot of situations where you're going to start him in like 2 QB superflex leagues. Algier, more of a daily fantasy thing. And then real quick, because I didn't hit it well enough. For the Commanders pass catchers, you're seeing an incredibly low target share for Dotson and Terry. That's kind of why I'm wondering if the Chiefs make a call about Terry this year. They, for whatever reason, Bieniemy is not using them a lot. The guy he is feeding is Curtis Samuel the last 2 weeks, who's had a 14 and 16 point game respectively, I believe, right around there. It's like between 14 and 15 and 15 and 16. Because of that, because it's this hodgepodge of receivers, I don't really know who you want. I would say Dotson's probably third because he sees the lowest usage, but he had a big game a couple weeks ago. Terry, you can always justify based on the talent, and he gets just enough to be relevant. But Curtis Samuel's been outperforming them both for 2 weeks. It's just sort of a mess over there, so I don't know what you want to do with that.
Yeah, it's so spread out. Like, to me right now for the Commanders, like, it kind of, our board shows it. Logan Thomas, for whatever reason, he is the one who is getting the most targets. So, like, in the order of, like, Commanders pass catchers, it's Logan Thomas 1, It's Terry 2. It's Dotson 3. And then Curtis Samuel 4. But Curtis Samuel has produced and scored the most fantasy points the past couple weeks. But yeah, it's gross. Other thing I want to mention, Desmond Ridder, undefeated at home. This is a game in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Not only is Desmond Ridder undefeated at home in his NFL career, he has never lost a home game in college or high school either. The dude is electric. He gets the home crowd going. So yeah, I like this spot for him. Definitely. All right, we got the Patriots going to Vegas to play the Raiders in the Jimmy G revenge game. The Patriots have an implied team total of 20 points, and the Raiders have an implied team total of 23 points. Just before we start on the starts and sits, Jimmy cost me $200 yesterday. I was in the lead for my pick'ems. All I had to do was just get the last game right. I faded the Raiders very heavily. I did it in the picks too. I was looking at another 5-0 week. Jimmy, even though he is no longer on the 49ers, he still finds a way to fucking torture me. It's an abusive relationship. I need to quit him. Anyways, for the Patriots, our start is Ramondre Stevenson, and we're sitting absolutely everybody else. The Patriots have looked terrible the past 2 weeks. This team is basically, I think they're very close to waving the white flag on this season already. That being said, this Raiders defense, they looked pretty good against the Packers last night, but I put that more on Jordan Love being a Bush League, not NFL starting level quarterback, and not on the Raiders defense being good. So that's why we like Ramondre. If anybody's going to do it on this Patriots team, it's probably him, but I don't love it. For the Raiders, we're starting Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, and Jacoby Myers. This Patriots defense is banged up. They're hurt. And Josh Jacobs, he hasn't had his best year so far, but this is a good enough spot to start him. This is also a Jacoby Myers revenge game, now that I think about it. He's looked good as like kind of the short intermediate route guy. It's funny, Devontae Adams, I think he like did an interview or something after the game, and he said, yeah, if we're only going to throw me the ball when I'm not double covered, I'll get 22 catches this year. So right now, Jimmy is just on his quick throws, looking to where the coverage is dictating and what's open, and Jacoby Myers has been open. So yeah, we're firing him up here. And Devontae Adams, obviously he just had those comments after the game, so he's not happy with the usage. Only getting 4 targets against the team you played at for like 10 years. That's tough for him. I would look for this to be like a squeaky wheel kind of game for him where he gets involved. And we're sitting handsome Jimmy. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled into starting him. I don't care if it's super flex. I don't care if you have to start Tyrod Taylor over him. Just don't do it.
Yep. Awful person.
Okay. Cost me money. Guy stinks.
Dude, no, and again, indirectly just harming the Niners, right, through the Brock Purdy discourse. I deeply resent him. All right, Eagles at the Jets. Eagles coming in at a 24-point implied total against the Jets at 17. The Jets' defense has actually been really solid, but that has more so been through the air. Through the run, they've been a little bit vulnerable, and I expect the Eagles to come in and pound the rock. You're starting to hurt A.J. Brown, Goddard, and Swift. Something worth mentioning, I guess, on the A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith thing. Devonta Smith's usage has really fallen off the last couple of weeks. That's why he's a tricky decision, and Goddard's usage has really gone up. And DeAndre Swift saw, like, I think almost a career high in terms of target percentage last week. So I think there's a lot of mouths to feed on this team. But one thing that does make this dynamic a little bit interesting is if one, I doubt there are very many rosters where you're benching Smith. But two, if Sauce Gardner shadows A.J. Brown, then expect it to be a big Smith game and a bad A.J. Green. That remains to be seen, but I do think I would guess that's what they would do. And then your sit is Kenny Gainwell, simply not seeing enough usage. He's more of a handcuff at this point. For the Jets, you're starting Breece Hall, I think, pretty much going forward. That was his first game with full run last week, and you saw him bust out chunk plays, and you know, guy went nuts. It's exactly what you drafted him for. You have to be happy. If you've held him all year, if you didn't sell low, good job. If you bought low, even better job. I've said that a few times today, because a few of these stars, there was all this pressure the first month. The last two that me and Ted have been talking about are CeeDee Lamb and Pollard. I would be trying to pick those guys if you can, man, and even Joe Mixon with his usage. But CeeDee Lamb and Pollard seem like the last two that have yet to have that big game. But a lot of nervous managers got what they were looking for out of Hall this week. And then Garrett Wilson, Zach Wilson has looked just good enough to keep him viable. I think this is a game where they're passing a lot. The Eagles are not very vulnerable on the ground. They are vulnerable through the air. So game script, defense that favors it, pass funnel defense. Zach Wilson actually has looked competent for 2 weeks now. You're starting Garrett Wilson. Your sits are Dalvin Cook. Again, Dalvin Cook has sort of moved to the territory where he's nothing more than a handcuff to Breece at this point, I think. Maybe there are some games where you project him to have a big enough lead that he'll get work. But I don't think you were starting him, but if you were, you're certainly not this week. And then the MILF Hunter, Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson is a sit. Even Superflex, probably. I mean, you know, maybe there are some Superflex rosters where a combination of buys and injuries he's rolling out there, 2 QB. But for the most part, you're gonna want to sit him. And no tricky decisions for the Jets.
I guess my only comments on this one are the Jets' backfield situation. Important to note, last week, Breece went against the Broncos, who have far and away given up the most fantasy points to running backs, and the Eagles are one of the stingiest run defenses. So I think this could, like, we're still saying start him because it's clearly he's all the way back and he's getting all the work, but temper expectations on this one. And I don't know if you can pick him anymore, but maybe try. And then I guess my other comment is Dalvin Cook. The Jets talked about this before the game last week. Their actions have proven it. Dalvin Cook is now not only just a handcuff, he's a low value handcuff. Like, Yanni, would you rather have Roschon Johnson or Dalvin Cook rostered at this point?
That's hard. I mean, Roschon, because he's usable in periods, you know, in spells, and may get the starting job. I don't see any scenario barring injury where Dalvin does.
Yeah.
If you're someone because of injury, the starter ahead of Roschon's injured. So,
yep, I meme Roschon to death, but I'd still take him over Dalvin Cook. Jalen Warren or Dalvin Cook?
That's fine. That's what I was about to ask. Again, though, in PPR, Jalen Warren's getting low double digits, so I guess you got to take Jalen Warren. Would you rather have Najee Harris or Dalvin Cook?
Najee Harris.
Yeah, he's not that low. But I'll give you a weirder one, like Elijah Mitchell or Dalvin Cook. You're taking Dalvin Cook.
Elijah Mitchell. Right? No. Elijah Mitchell's in a better offense, and he's not just toast. Dalvin is toast, bro. Like, I got that so wrong. I remember during the offseason, me and Yanni were arguing when we were putting together our positional tier list rankings or whatever. They never saw the light of day. I don't know if we posted them on the Twitter or not. But my big thing this year was I was lower on Breece Hall than most people because I thought that Dalvin Cook was going to have way more work than he should have, and I thought Aaron Rodgers was going to love him just as an old veteran, you know, because he does that. He brought in Randall Cobb, he brought in Alan Lazard. He likes his guys. So I thought Dalvin, it just made too much sense for him to be a guy. But I was totally wrong. The dude's toast, especially with Aaron gone. Borderline drop, honestly, for me.
Borderline. I just think because Breece is coming off a major injury, you know, and because they have a good enough defense and they use the running backs enough, I would call him like a reasonable handcuff. Like Tajay Spears, I would certainly rather roster. He's a reasonable handcuff, I think.
I think we spent too long on this Jets backfield. It's going to be the Eagles are going to beat the shit out of the Jets this game. All right, next we got Detroit going into Tampa Bay to play the Buccaneers. The Lions have an implied team total of about 23 points, and the Bucs have an implied team total of 20 points. Our starts for the Lions are Jared Goff, my champion. I have a signed jersey of him. I'm his number one fan. The Sun God, Amon-Ra. What was that?
Andy's well endowed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's got a hog, a cannon. Amon-Ra, St. Brown, the Sun God, Monty, and Laporta Potty are all just fire 'em up starts. This is going to be the Buccaneers. Like their defense is not as good defending the pass as the run. So just give me all those guys. And then Monty is just he's got to be at cost one of the best possible draft picks you could have made this year. Tricky decisions for the Lions. Jamison Williams. This should be his first week back, I believe, from the gambling suspension.
He was back last week. He just was on a snap count.
Oh, he was?
They changed the rules, which got him back a week early.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he didn't do well. He didn't do anything.
I don't know. I mean, I figured they've got to get him involved, right? Like, it's so weird. They drafted him so high, and he's been unavailable for the majority of his career. I would imagine they want to see what they have in him. Then Jahmyr Gibbs.
It's been like attitude. It's been like attitude issues. They said he's not taking practice very seriously. He's not blocking that sort of stuff. But he'll figure it out.
And then Jahmyr Gibbs, too. Coming off an injury, he might not even play to begin with. And even if he does play, he is clearly the second fiddle in this Lions rushing attack. It blows my mind you would spend like the number 10 overall pick on him, I believe, and not even want to get him involved. But the Lions are winning. They're not going to stop doing what they're doing anytime soon. The Buccaneers, our starts this week are Mike Evans, if he plays, and Chris Godwin. I believe Evans had a hamstring. He aggravated against the Saints. The Bucs just had their bye week. Evans has not been practicing so far this week. Just keep your eye on that. But if he plays, absolutely a start. And Chris Godwin, if Mike Evans doesn't play, he's absolutely a start. If Mike Evans does play, I think he's somewhere in between start and tricky decision. It depends. This Lions rushing defense has been, I believe, top 3 in the league this year. They've been outstanding against the run. So the Bucs going to have to throw the ball around if they want to score points. Our sit is Rachaad White, just based on that number 3 rushing defense in the Lions. This Bucs team isn't great at running the ball anyways. Rachaad White is not that great of a player, and it's a bad defensive matchup. Sit him. And tricky decision is Baker. Baker has looked good this year. I mean, as good as he can look, I think. I've already said it 3 times, but this Lions team, if you're going to score on him, it has to be throwing the ball. So we think he's worth a shot in some spots. Probably more of a super flex quarterback than a standard or 12-team league. But, just look at your options, see what you have. You got anything on this one, Yanni?
Nope. You nailed it. Okay, Cardinals, Rams, the Fighting Gannons coming in at around 21 points implied total. Rams at about 28. For the Cardinals, due to game script and really just due to him being a really, really good value this year, has been Hollywood Brown. I think he's close to a weekly starter at this point. He's had not quite sure off the top of my head what his average is per game. I want to say it's like 11 and a half, probably somewhere around there, and a half PPR. So he's been, a more than fine flex. He's like a flex plus kind of guy. So you're starting him. Zach Ertz continues to see the steady diet of targets, and especially in PPR, he's a start. But even in half PPR, with the game script, with everything going on, I think you're going to start him in a lot of leagues. Maybe standard. There's some discussion to be had there. You're sitting Dobbs. Dobbs fell back down to earth last week. I started him over Joe Burrow in a league. That was fun. So he's a sit. He's a sit against a tough defense. And then your tricky decisions are their backfield. The Emarcado, the fellow who they had last week, he had 12.6 points with James Conner going on the IR. It's hard to say which one. They have that rookie kid. I forget his name. Keontae Ingram.
Keontae Ingram.
Is that yeah, there's a bunch. There's like 6 rookies right now that are floating around. He actually outsnapped Emarcado. I think it's Emarcado. I should have gotten that.
DeMarcado.
DeMarcado? Okay,
Yeah.
he outsnapped DeMarcado week 1 when James Conner went out. So I would also say consider that when you're factoring in your fab. I would imagine he's going to be a very popular ad this week. There is, to me, you're not sure who's going to be the lead dog in their backfield, and I'm probably not dumping a ton of my fab until we're sure. I don't think it's like a Jerome Ford situation. So they're both tricky decisions. For the Rams, especially in a plus matchup like this, you're starting Stafford, you're starting Kupp, you're starting Puka, you're starting Kyren. Again, they're all getting usage to the point where Puka and Kupp you're always starting, but Kyron's getting usage where it's very hard to bench him. I can't imagine in like a 12-person league how many rosters are going to have the luxury to bench Kyron. I would imagine it's very few. And then Stafford, because of the plus matchup, because he's looked so good this year, and Kupp being back elevates the offense. You are starting him. Your tricky decisions, Higbee, more so because Kupp coming back eats a lot into his target share. He's been good enough this year, though, again, especially in PPR. So we're not calling him a must start, but he's a tricky decision. A lot of rosters you will be starting Higbee, especially again if you're starting Ertz, you're probably starting Higbee. You know, he's kind of on that. They're close in tier, but Ertz has the better game script as far as passing attempts go. So that's all I have for that.
I guess my only two comments on this game are I can't stand Kyren Williams. I don't think he's a very good player. But yeah, the usage so far, he's a locked in, at least RB2, maybe even higher. As much as I don't even like the guy, you just got to give him his flowers. He's done good. And then comment number 2, James Conner. You fight Talanoa Hufanga, or you try and fight him. Watch what happens to your knee, buddy. Okay.
Yeah, he didn't make it a week.
Next time you'll think twice. Maybe you'll switch your jersey with Talanoa and take a picture with him instead of try and fight him.
Now, you're making a joke, right? But here's the real part of that. Have you seen that stat about how few teams win after they play the Niners the next week?
Yeah.
The Niners don't just beat up teams. They take their soul, man. They really, damage people on, a serious level. And you do just wonder, James Conner took a beating in that game. He came out for spells. Yeah, man. It's a team that puts you through the meat grinder. So you do wonder to what degree the damage from that game carried over.
Well, all right, next one. Geez, this is going to be a bloodbath. The New York Giants are going into Buffalo to play the real New York team, the Buffalo Bills. The Giants have an implied team total of about 15 points. It will be lower than that. And the Bills have an implied team total of about 29 points. It will be higher than that. Our only start for the Giants is Saquon. Just important to note, he is coming off the high ankle. I would not expect him to even be full go Saquon here. But this is the only guy they have on their team that is good and matters. Our tricky decision is Darren Waller, just probably because where you drafted him, and the Giants have no legitimate threats on the outside. If they're going to try and throw the ball, which they'll have to do in this game because they will be down, it's going to probably have to try and go through Waller, and we're sitting everybody else. It looks like this is probably a Tyrod Taylor game instead of Dimes. Tyrod Taylor is just like a slightly worse Dimes, really.
Slightly.
Well,
not a lot worse. He's a slightly worse Dimes.
Yeah, he's a slightly worse Danny Dimes, and he's making how much less a year? $40 million less a year? Something like that?
Probably $36 million less a year, yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, it's bad for this Giants team. If you like them, I'm sorry. Last year was so encouraging with Brian Daboll, but I think that was the absolute best case scenario that they could ever look last year. They were 9-7. This is more of a regression to the mean and what they actually are. For the Bills, we are firing up everybody. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, James Cook. Gabe Davis, don't look now. He's starting to be consistent. He's starting to be a reliable fantasy asset, and he was going so much later in drafts this year. He was a guy that I really liked this offseason, especially since his price tag wasn't a 4th rounder like he was 2 years ago. So yeah, if you drafted him, congratulations. This whole Bills team is a wagon. Tough one last week in London. I'm willing to chalk that up to the actual travel schedule. I think that was an unfair spot for them. They had to fly to London to play a team that had been there for 2 weeks. And Roger Goodell in an interview said, the reason we're doing this, we're having a team fly to London to play a team that's already been in London, is to see if this is something that we could do if we have a franchise out here. So the Bills were a recipient of losing a home game to that nonsense. They're going to come out and just beat the brakes off this Giants team. It's going to be ugly. Our only tricky decisions are Knox and Kincaid. They're both hurt. Knox has a wrist. Dalton Kincaid is in concussion protocol. When they both play, they kind of eat into each other's production to the point where neither of them are really like a start that you want. I think it's probably more likely that Knox plays and Kincaid misses. If Kincaid misses and Knox plays, you could think about a start here. If they both play, just tricky decision. I don't love either of them. You got anything to add to this one? This entertaining game, Yanni? Or can we just move on?
No. I forget who. I think the Giants have a horrible matchup next week, too. Jeez. I feel terrible for them. Yeah, it's awful, dude.
The Giants could use some Caleb Williams.
I want to say maybe they play the Eagles next week. Okay. Cowboys at the Chargers. Cowboys coming in at 26.25 or 26 points. Chargers at 24. I thought the 2-point spread was kind of weird for this game. It's 2 points in favor of the Cowboys. For the Cowboys, I mean, the Chargers defense and their defensive head coach are garbage. So Pollard, CD, Dak are all viable this week. Obviously Pollard and CD, no doubt. Dak roster dependent. I don't know how many people went in with Dak as like their solidified QB1 this year. So I would imagine you have some choices on that, but I think if you're firing him up, this is the week to do so. Fergalicious Ferguson, man. He was kind of locked in as that number 2 passing option in the offense. And he didn't have a great week last week, but generally speaking, I think again for most rosters you are probably starting him. You'd have to have a pretty good option to not be, but he is a tricky decision. Just because I expect a big, Ted called it a squeaky wheel gets the grease game, whatever you want to call it. AJ Brown, we've seen the last 2 weeks. When these star wide receivers start complaining, you do tend to see them get fed the next week. So I think it's a big CD game. For the Chargers, Herbert, Eckler, Keenan Allen, your studs, especially without Mike Williams. If Keenan Allen stays healthy this year, I believe he is the number. Yes, he has been. Since he came back from injury last year in PPR, he is the number 1 receiver in a points per game average. He has kept that up through this year. If he stays healthy and Mike Williams stays out, he will compete in full PPR and maybe even half. He will compete for the wide receiver over 1 overall crown. Kellen Moore runs the highest. I think he's like 4th or 5th highest in play rate in the NFL and one of the highest pass rates in the NFL. He loves to run a ton of plays and a ton of pass plays. So you have to feel great if you have Keenan Allen in your roster. I only have 1 share, but you do feel good. You're sitting Joshua Kelly, not just now, forever. Throw him in the dumpster. The guy's horrible. I cut him like a week before the Eckler injury was over. I couldn't bear it. I started him twice. I think he got 5 points combined. He's not even a valuable handcuff. He's not, because they'll just pass the ball 50 times if Eckler gets injured. There's no reason for him to be on any roster, and there's certainly no reason for him to be starting. Your tricky decisions are going to be Josh Palmer and Parham. Quinton Johnston. Sure, Johnston. Oh, God, I hate that guy. I hope he has a horrible career. So he is not quite ready, it looks like, to get serious reps in the NFL. So Josh Palmer's kind of been their number 2 option. And it's certainly not a horrible matchup for this one, but it's a pretty high overall total. I can see a lot of rosters where you're going to start him, probably more of a DFS thing. And then Parham, it's pretty clear he's either going to get the touchdown or he's not. He's had a couple like 1 or 2 point games. He's had a couple 9 to 12 point games. One game, I think he had like 9 yards, 2 touchdowns. So probably a better plan standard than PPR and half PPR. But he has a tricky decision. And that's all I've got on that one.
Yeah, pretty much for me too. I finally have a claim to drop Joshua Kelly. We'll see if it goes through. But he's been a good soldier for me. I didn't have to start him those 2 weeks, though, where everybody thought he was a smash.
Yeah, what do you mean? He's been a good soldier because you look at him on your bench and go, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I did that with him. That's great.
well, okay. Let me just like, would you rather keep Joshua Kelly or AJ Dillon on your bench?
AJ Dillon.
Really? I think it's kind of close, but
AJ Dillon had like 14 points last week.
well, yeah, but he without Aaron Jones though. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
Yes, hold on. So yes, when they both were missing their RB1s, right? AJ Dillon, I think, had like 20 points in 2 weeks, and Kelly had 5. Yeah, I'll keep AJ Dillon.
I think AJ Dillon had like 3 2 weeks ago,
Yes.
like without Aaron Jones.
I thought he had like 5, 6, but okay, 15 to 20.
He's
compared to 5.
uninspired. I loved AJ Dillon coming into this year. He has been an uninspiring 0 for me. But yeah, I do have him slightly ahead of Joshua Kelly in my power rankings. So
Watching him play football is like watching eye surgery. It's about as entertaining.
all right, that's the Monday night game. So that's gonna do it for us. If you made it through the whole video, congratulations. Please like, subscribe. We're doing our best to get these 3 videos up a week, but we got school going on, we got work, we got tooth surgeries for cats. Life is crazy. Keep your eyes peeled for Saturday. I'm really excited about what we're going to release. I think it's going to be very fun, and it'll be a little change of pace from our usual stuff. Do you have a good comment for the people, Yanni, to leave?
No, I do enjoy it. Just on one note to any Cowboys fans that may find this, I enjoyed when Micah Parsons said it's going to be personal next time we play him, and Debo responded with, "It's been personal, dude." I was like, "You haven't been playing like it's personal." No, that's it though. The Niners are a much better team than the Cowboys. It's my only comment.
Yes, sir. All right, we will catch you guys on Saturday for the gambling episode. Take it easy.
Yep. Thanks for watching.